Who's the greatest tight end in NFL history? Travis Kelce, Shannon Sharp, Kellen Winslow, Ozzie Newsome, Antonio Gates. You can take your pick. For me, it's Rob Gronkowski, and it's not even close. The catching, the blocking, the winning, the absolute dominance. We've never seen anything like him before. At his peak, he was the most unguardable player in the sport. Too big for safeties, too fast for linebackers, and he did it all while having a good time.
Yo soy fiesta.
Before the NFL dominance, before the Super Bowl rings, before becoming the most feared tight end in football history, Rob Gronkowski was just a kid from Buffalo trying to make it work at the University of Arizona. And honestly, he was already a problem. In his freshman year in 2007, Gronk caught 28 passes for 525 yards and 6 TDs. Not bad for a first-year player still learning the position, but it was his sophomore season in 08 where the world got a glimpse of what was ridiculous 10 touchdowns. He led the entire Pac-10 conference in receiving touchdowns, not just tight ends, but everyone. The combination of size, speed, and hands were already there. At 6'6", 265 pounds, he was catching passes like a receiver and blocking like a lineman. The blueprint for what would become the most dominant tight end ever was already being written in Tucson, Arizona. Then disaster struck. A herniated disc in his back required surgery, and Gronk missed his entire junior season in 09. For most players, that would have been devastating. A back injury that requires surgery? That's the kind of thing that derails careers before they even start. Gronk wasn't most players. April 22nd, 2010, NFL Draft Day. Despite the injury concerns and missing an entire season, the New England Patriots traded up in the second round to select Gronk with the 42nd overall pick. Bill Belichick saw something special, and he was about to be proven right in the most spectacular way possible. His rookie season was, well, it was absurd. 42 receptions, 546 yards, and 10 touchdowns as a rookie, as a tight end coming off of back surgery. He became the youngest player in NFL history to record 3 or more touchdown receptions in a single game at just 21 years old and 180 days. But if you thought that was impressive, you weren't ready for what was to come next. The 2011 season isn't when Gronk just became great. He became something we'd never seen before. Before this season, the single season touchdown record for a tight end was 13, set by Antonio Gates in 04 and matched by Vernon Davis in 09. Gronk didn't just break this record, he obliterated it. 17 receiving touchdowns, plus 1 rushing touchdown for good measure, giving him 18 total scores on the season. That's not even breaking a record, that's making everyone before you look like they weren't even trying. And it wasn't just the touchdowns, 90 receptions for 1,327 yards. He averaged 83 yards per game, the highest receiving yards per game average for a tight end in a single season in Patriots history. Tom Brady and Gronk connected for touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. The chemistry was instant, the dominance was undeniable, and Brady had a higher passer rating when targeting Gronkowski than any other player in his career. Gronk became the first tight end ever to lead the league in receiving touchdowns, and he was named first team All-Pro and made his first Pro Bowl. Oh, and he was also only 22 years old. The NFL had never seen anything like this. A tight end who could line up anywhere, beat any coverage, and score from anywhere on the field. He was revolutionizing the position in real time. He dominated in their first playoff game that season, putting up 145 yards and 3 touchdowns in a beatdown against the Broncos in the divisional round. But he went quiet the next 2 games, ultimately losing in a heartbreaker to the Giants in the Super Bowl. However, the future was still bright. Coming off that nuclear 2011 campaign, expectations were through the roof, and for the first 11 games, Gronk was meeting them. 55 receptions, 790 yards, and 11 touchdowns in just 11 games. He was on pace for another monster season, but then came the injury, and injuries would start to become a recurring theme. In week 11 against the Colts, Gronk broke his forearm. He tried to play through it, even had surgery to insert a plate, but the injury required multiple procedures due to complications. He missed 6 regular season games total, but gutted it out for the playoffs. Even injured and even not at full strength, he was still one of the most dangerous weapons in football. The Patriots made it to the AFC Championship game, but Gronk's injury-plagued season was a preview of the battles his body would face. The 2013 season was brutal. Gronk started the year still recovering from the forearm issues, and then in week 7, disaster struck again. A torn ACL and MCL in his right knee, plus a concussion in the same game. He played just 7 games that season total, 39 receptions, 592 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Good numbers for most tight ends, but we knew that Gronk was capable of more when healthy. And the whispers started. Was his body now finally breaking down? Could he really stay on the field? And were the injuries going to define his career? But here's the thing about Rob Gronkowski. Man doesn't quit. After missing significant time in 2012 and 2013, Gronk in 2014 came back with a vengeance. 82 receptions for 1,124 yards and 12 touchdowns in 15 games. He was back to being the most dominant tight end in football, and the NFL took notice. First team All-Pro, Pro Bowl selection, and the award that meant the most, NFL Comeback Player of the Year. But most importantly, the Patriots were rolling. They finished 12-4 and were headed to the playoffs with a healthy Gronk, which meant they were basically unstoppable. In the divisional round against Baltimore, Gronk went off for 108 yards and a touchdown. In the AFC Championship game against the Colts, he added another touchdown in the blowout win. And then came the Super Bowl against the Seattle Seahawks and the Legion of Boom. Gronk caught 6 passes for 68 yards and a touchdown in the 28-24 comeback victory. His first Super Bowl ring, and the comeback was complete. And if 2014 was the comeback, then 2015 was the reminder that when healthy, Rob Gronkowski was simply the best player at his position by a mile. 72 receptions, 1,176 yards, and 11 touchdowns. He averaged 78 yards per game and became just the third tight end in NFL history to have 3 seasons with 10-plus touchdowns and 1,000-plus receiving yards. The other two? Antonio Gates. And, well, just Gates at that point. Gronk was now in the class by himself, another first-team All-Pro for the 3rd time, Pro Bowl for the 4th time, and he was just doing things that defied logic. The catches he was making weren't just impressive, they were impossible. One-handed grabs in traffic, toe-tap sideline catches, jump balls over double coverage. He was 6'6", 265 pounds, and moving like a receiver. The Patriots went 12-4 again, but fell short in the AFC Championship game against the Denver Broncos. Still, Gronk had cemented himself as one of the most dominant tight ends of his generation, and in that AFC Championship game, the final 2 drives were all him. The 2016 season was supposed to be another dominant year, and instead, it became another injury-plagued nightmare. Just 8 games played, 25 receptions, 540 yards, and 3 touchdowns. A hamstring injury costed him 2 games, a chest injury cost him another, and then in week 12, another back injury ended his season after just 8 games. The frustration was real. The talent was undeniable, but the body just kept breaking down. The Patriots won the Super Bowl that year, coming back from 28-3 to beat the Falcons 34-28 in the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history. But Gronk could only watch from the sideline, unable to contribute. It had to be eating at him. After the injury-shortened 2016 season, Gronk came back in 2017 with something to prove. 69 receptions for 1,084 yards and 8 touchdowns in 14 games. He was back in the top 10 for receiving yards, back to being the most feared tight end in football. 4th first-team All-Pro selection, 5th Pro Bowl, and the Patriots were rolling again, finishing 13-3 and earning the top seed in the AFC. In the playoffs, Gronk was unstoppable, 16 catches for 218 yards and 3 touchdowns across 3 playoff games. They made it to the Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles, and Gronk showed up. 9 catches for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns, but it wasn't enough. The Patriots lost 41-33, and Gronk had to watch another championship slip away. Still, he had proven once again that when healthy, he was the most dominant force at his position. Then in the 2018 season, it would be Gronk's last, but nobody knew it at the time. And honestly, you could tell something was different. 47 receptions for 682 yards and just 3 touchdowns in 13 games. The numbers were down, the explosiveness wasn't quite there. The years of punishment were definitely adding up. But when it mattered the most in the playoffs, Gronk found another gear. In the AFC Championship game against the Kansas City Chiefs, he caught 6 passes for 79 yards and had an iconic walkout with Tom Brady. In the Super Bowl against the Los Angeles Rams just a few weeks later, he had 6 catches for 87 yards in the Patriots' 13-3 defensive slugfest, and more than likely was the only reason that they actually wound up scoring a touchdown. And after his 3rd Super Bowl ring and 9th season in New England, he finally walked away. On March 26, 2019, Rob Gronkowski announced his retirement from the NFL. He was only 29 years old, but the toll on his body was real. The back surgeries, the broken bones, the concussions, he needed to step away for his mental and physical health. And honestly, nobody could blame him. He had given everything to the game. For a year, Gronk was retired. He focused on his health, his business ventures, and his life outside of football. But then Tom Brady left the New England Patriots and signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And suddenly, retirement didn't seem so permanent. On April 21st, 2020, the Buccaneers traded for Gronk's rights, and the greatest quarterback tight end duo in NFL history was reunited. The 2020 season was about proving he could still do it. 45 receptions for 623 yards and 7 TDs in 16 games. Not the peak Gronk numbers, but he was 31 years old and coming off of retirement. But in the playoffs, that's when the old Gronk showed up. 8 catches for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns across 4 playoff games, including 6 catches for 67 yards and 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. His 4th Super Bowl ring, and he did it in his first year with the new team in a new system after a year away from football. The 2021 season would officially be his last. 55 receptions for 802 yards and 6 touchdowns in 12 games before the injuries cut his season short again. On June 21st, 2022, he announced his retirement for the 2nd and final time. This time, it stuck. What Rob Gronkowski accomplished in his 11 NFL seasons was absolutely ridiculous. 621 career receptions for 9,286 yards and 92 receiving touchdowns, plus 1 rushing touchdown for a total of 93 scores. He's third all-time in receiving touchdowns by a tight end. He holds a single-season touchdown record for tight ends with 17 in 2011, a record that still stands today and probably will for a long time. He had the most 100-yard receiving games by a tight end in NFL history with 32 by the time of his retirement. He's one of 2 tight ends in NFL history with 3 seasons of 10-plus touchdowns and 1,000-plus receiving yards. He had 5 seasons with 10 or more touchdowns, the most by any tight end ever. In the playoffs, he was the all-time leading receiver in touchdowns by the time he retired with 15. He had the most postseason receiving yards by a tight end with 1,163, and he was the first tight end to ever reach 1,000 career postseason receiving yards. In Super Bowl history, he has the most receiving yards by a tight end with 23 and the most receiving yards by a tight end with 297. 4 Super Bowl championships, 5 Pro Bowl selections, 4 first-team All-Pro selections. He's on the NFL 2010s All-Decade team and the NFL's 100th anniversary All-Time team. And here's the crazy part. He did all of this while missing significant time due to injury. He played just 143 regular season games across 11 seasons. That's an average of 13 games per season. Imagine what the numbers would have looked like if he had stayed healthy. You can't talk about Gronk without also talking about Tom Brady. Together they connected for 105 touchdowns, the second most by any quarterback receiver duo in NFL history, only to Jerry Rice and Steve Young by the time they both retired. Brady's passer rating when targeting Gronk was 124, the highest of any receiver he threw to with at least 100 targets. In the playoffs, they connected for 15 touchdowns, which had tied them for the most postseason touchdowns by any quarterback receiver duo in NFL history by the time they were both gone. The chemistry was instant, the trust was absolute, and Brady knew that if he threw it anywhere near Gronk, he was coming down with it. And Gronk knew that Brady would give him a chance to make a play. They won 3 Super Bowls together in New England, then reunited in Tampa Bay to win a 4th. The greatest quarterback of all time and the greatest tight end of all time rewriting the record books together. It was a partnership that defined an era of football. But here's what the stats don't tell you. Rob Gronkowski changed the way the tight end position is played. Before Gronk, tight ends were either receivers who couldn't block or blockers who couldn't catch. You had your Antonio Gates types who were putting up pure receiving threats, or your traditional inline blockers who might catch a few passes. Gronk did everything at an elite level. He could line up anywhere and pancake defensive ends. He could split out wide and beat cornerbacks. He could run seam routes and outjump safeties. He could catch screens and run through linebackers. There is no defensive answer for him because he had no weaknesses. And he did it all with a smile on his face. The spike celebrations, the dancing, the pure joy he played with. In a league that can be brutal and serious, Gronk reminded everyone that football is supposed to be fun. He was the ultimate weapon in an era where the NFL was becoming more pass-heavy, more creative, and more dynamic. He was a prototype that every team now tries to find. And how many times have you heard a team draft a tight end and the comparison is, we're hoping he can be our next Gronk? That's the impact, that's the legacy. And finally, here's what separates Gronk from every other receiving tight end. It's the blocking. Travis Kelce is an incredible receiver, one of the best ever, but he's not the blocker Gronk was. Antonio Gates put up monster numbers, but he wasn't dominating defensive ends in the run game. Gronk was consistently rated as one of the top blocking tight ends in the league year after year, while simultaneously being the most dangerous receiving threat at the position. He was the most complete tight end and the only one we've ever seen who truly had no weaknesses. He made defenses change their entire game plan. Teams would dictate their best coverage player to him and he'd still dominate. They double team him and he'd still make plays. They tried to jam him at the line and he'd run right through them. At his peak from 2010 to 2015, when he was healthy, he was the most dominant player at his position in the NFL. Not just among tight ends, but amongst everyone. So there you have it. The undeniable brilliance of Rob Gronkowski. Thanks for watching and subscribe if you're new.